What if I told you that one of the most detailed descriptions of heaven ever written comes from a book that most people have never read? A book so extraordinary, so filled with visions of celestial realms, that it shaped the understanding of heaven for centuries before being lost to most of the world. The Book of Enoch isn't just another ancient text. It's a first-hand account from a man who walked with God so closely that Scripture says he never died. Instead, God took him directly to heaven while he was still alive. And what Enoch saw there, what he experienced in those celestial realms, will change everything you thought you knew about the world beyond this one. Today, we're going to journey through the seven heavens as described by Enoch himself. We'll walk through crystal palaces, witness the throne room of the Almighty, and discover realms of beauty so magnificent that human language barely contains them.
Yes.
If you've ever wondered what heaven truly looks like, not just the golden streets we've heard about, but the actual structure, the beings, the indescribable glory that awaits us, then stay with me until the end. This isn't just theology or ancient mythology. This is the testimony of a man who was there, who saw it with his own eyes, and who came back to tell us what's waiting for those who love God. Prepare to have your understanding of eternity completely transformed. Before we dive into the visions of heaven itself, we need to understand who Enoch was and why his testimony carries such weight. This wasn't just any prophet or holy man. Enoch held a position so unique in human history that it's mentioned in both the Old and New Testaments. Genesis 5:21-24 tells us something remarkable. When Enoch had lived 65 years, he became the father of Methuselah. After he became the father of Methuselah, Enoch walked faithfully with God 300 years and had other sons and daughters. Altogether, Enoch lived a total of 365 years. Enoch walked faithfully with God. Then he was no more, because God took him away. Think about that phrase, God took him away. Enoch never experienced death. He never felt his body fail or his breath stop. Instead, while he was still fully alive, fully human, God lifted him out of this world.
For before he was taken, he was commended as one who pleased God. And Jude 14-15 actually quotes from the book of Enoch directly. Enoch, the seventh from Adam, prophesied about them. See, the Lord is coming with thousands upon thousands of his holy ones to judge everyone. This wasn't a man having mystical dreams or symbolic visions. According to his own account, Enoch was physically transported into the presence of God, given access to realms that human beings had never seen, and then sent back to record what he witnessed for future generations. What makes this even more significant is that Enoch lived before the flood, before the law was given to Moses, before the temple was built in Jerusalem. He was seeing the eternal, unchanging structure of heaven itself, not temporary earthly shadows or symbolic representations. He was seeing the real thing, the actual dwelling place of the Most High God. And what he saw there was beyond anything the human mind could have invented. The complexity, the beauty, the cosmic scope of what he describes reads like the account of someone who truly stood in the presence of infinite majesty and tried his best to put it into human words. When Enoch writes about crystal walls and fiery beings, about the sounds of worship that shake the foundations of heaven, about light that has no source because it flows from the very essence of God himself, he's not speaking in metaphors. He's a man struggling to describe realities that transcend everything we know about physics, beauty, and existence itself. This is why the early church treasured the book of Enoch. This is why it was quoted by apostles and referenced by church fathers. They understood that this wasn't just another religious writing. This was the testimony of a man who had been where they all longed to go, who had seen what they all longed to see, and who had come back to tell them that everything they hoped for was real, was waiting, and was more glorious than they could possibly imagine. Speaking of spreading these incredible truths, if you've ever felt called to share the gospel online through powerful videos like this one, I want you to know about something special. You don't need to be on camera or have fancy equipment to create content that reaches souls around the world. Click the link in the description to discover how you can start your own gospel-centered YouTube channel and be part of spreading these eternal truths to the nations. Now let's continue with Enoch's extraordinary journey. When Enoch was taken up from the earth, he didn't just arrive in one location called heaven. Instead, he was guided through what he describes as 7 distinct heavens, each one more magnificent than the last, each one revealing different aspects of God's eternal kingdom. This concept of multiple heavens wasn't unique to Enoch. The Apostle Paul mentions being caught up to the 3rd heaven in 2 Corinthians 12:2. But Enoch provides us with the most detailed map of these celestial realms that exists anywhere in ancient literature. The first heaven appears to be the realm just beyond our physical world, where Enoch first encountered the angelic beings who would serve as his guides. Here he describes seeing the storehouses of natural phenomena, the places where snow, hail, wind, and clouds are kept before being released upon the earth. This isn't just poetic language. Enoch is describing a level of divine organization and purposefulness in creation that modern meteorology is only beginning to understand. He writes about seeing the paths of the stars, not as distant points of light, but as ordered highways along which celestial bodies travel according to divine decree. He describes chambers where lightning is stored and the homes of the 4 winds. To a man from ancient times, these visions must have been incomprehensible, yet they align remarkably with what we now know about the organized nature of cosmic forces. The 2nd heaven is described as a place of judgment and imprisonment, where fallen angels await their final punishment. Here Enoch encounters beings who once stood in the presence of God, but chose rebellion instead of worship. The darkness of this realm serves as a stark contrast to the increasing glory of the higher heavens, reminding us that even in the celestial realms, choices have consequences. But it's when Enoch reaches the 3rd heaven that his descriptions begin to take on an otherworldly quality that defies our normal categories of experience. Here he speaks of a garden more beautiful than Eden, where the tree of life grows not as a single tree, but as a forest of immortality. The fragrance from these trees, he says, is so powerful that it can be sensed from distances that would take hundreds of years to travel. This is the realm that Paul was caught up to, the place he describes as so glorious that he heard inexpressible things, things that no one is permitted to tell. 2 Corinthians 12:4. It's a place where the boundary between the physical and spiritual begins to blur, where earthly concepts like distance and time start to lose their meaning. The 4th heaven is where Enoch begins to encounter the mechanics of celestial worship. Here he describes seeing the angels who control the movements of the sun and moon, beings whose very existence is dedicated to maintaining the cosmic order that allows life to exist. These aren't abstract forces or impersonal natural laws, but conscious beings whose worship of God takes the form of perfect obedience to divine command. Enoch writes about hearing their songs, but these aren't melodies that could be reproduced by human voices. They're harmonies that resonate through the fabric of creation itself. Songs that keep the stars in their courses and the seasons in their cycles. The very stability of our physical universe, Enoch suggests, is maintained by the worship of angels we never see. The 5th heaven is described as a realm of preparation and training, where angels receive their assignments for ministry on earth and throughout creation. Here Enoch sees the organizational structure of heaven's government, the hierarchies and orders that ensure every prayer is heard, every need is known, every divine plan is perfectly executed. It's in this realm that Enoch begins to understand the vast scope of God's activity throughout creation. He's shown that what we experience on earth is just a tiny fraction of God's cosmic work, that there are countless worlds and realms all operating under divine authority, all part of a plan so magnificent that even the angels themselves don't see all of it. The 6th heaven is where Enoch encounters the angelic beings responsible for recording and preserving all of human history. Here he describes vast libraries where every human action, every word spoken, every intention of the heart is perfectly preserved. These aren't cold, bureaucratic records, but living testimonies that will be opened at the final judgment. More than that, Enoch has shown that these records aren't just about judgment, they're about remembrance. Every act of kindness, every moment of faithfulness, every tear shed in love for God is treasured and preserved in these celestial archives. Nothing good is ever forgotten in heaven. Nothing done in love is ever lost. But it's the seventh heaven that reduces Enoch to stammering attempts at description. This is the throne room of the Almighty, the place where the very source of all existence dwells in perfect, unapproachable light. And what Enoch sees there will challenge everything you thought you knew about the glory of God. When Enoch finally reaches the seventh heaven, he finds himself standing before something that no human language can adequately describe, the throne room of the Most High God. Yet he attempts to paint this picture for us, using every word at his disposal to help us glimpse what awaits those who will one day stand in that same presence. The first thing Enoch notices is the floor. Not golden streets as we might expect, but something he describes as crystal, yet not like any crystal known on earth. This crystal appears to be alive, pulsing with inner light, reflecting not images, but somehow reflecting the very nature of God himself. It's perfectly transparent, yet Enoch says you can see infinite depths within it, as if you're looking into the very heart of creation itself. The walls of this cosmic throne room are described as being made of tongues of fire, but again, not earthly fire. This is fire that doesn't consume but reveals, fire that doesn't burn but purifies by its very presence. The walls themselves seem to be alive, moving like living flames, yet providing perfect structure and enclosure to this most sacred space. The ceiling is beyond description. Enoch struggles with words, finally settling on saying it's like lightning in the path of the stars, constantly moving, constantly changing, yet maintaining perfect order. It's as if the very expanse above the throne shows the electrical activity of divine thought, the constant flow of omniscient awareness that governs all creation. But these physical descriptions, magnificent as they are, pale in comparison to what occupies the center of this room, the throne itself. Enoch describes it as being larger than the sun, yet somehow intimate enough that conversation is possible. It appears to be carved from a single massive crystal, but a crystal that contains within it every color that has ever existed, and many colors that earthly eyes have never seen. The throne doesn't sit on a platform, it hovers, suspended by what Enoch can only describe as the pure will of God. Around its base flow rivers of liquid light, not water but light itself in liquid form, flowing in perfect streams that somehow sing as they move. These rivers, Enoch realizes, are the source of all light in all creation. Every star, every sun, every photon that has ever existed has its origin in these streams of glory flowing from the base of God's throne. Surrounding the throne are beings that defy classification. Enoch calls them the seraphim and cherubim, but his descriptions go far beyond the symbolic representations we find in other parts of Scripture. These beings are vast, their wings spanning distances that would cover entire continents on earth. Yet they move with perfect grace, their every motion an act of worship, their very existence a hymn of praise to the one who sits upon the throne. Their faces, Enoch tells us, are like lightning, not because they're frightening, but because they reflect the glory of God so perfectly that looking at them is like looking at concentrated light itself. Their wings don't just beat, they create music with every movement, harmonies so complex that they contain within them all the melodies that have ever been or ever will be sung in worship to God. But the most remarkable thing about these beings is their eyes. Enoch describes them as having eyes that cover their entire bodies, thousands upon thousands of eyes, but each one showing not just sight but understanding, wisdom, love. These beings don't just see everything, they comprehend everything, and their comprehension turns immediately into worship. The sounds in this throne room are unlike anything we could imagine. The worship of these celestial beings creates what Enoch describes as the voice of many waters, but also the sound of great thunder, yet also somehow the whisper of perfect love. It's loud enough to shake the foundations of all creation, yet gentle enough that every word is perfectly clear. It's the sound of perfect beings offering perfect worship to a perfect God. And above all this, through all this, in all this, is the presence of the one for whom it all exists. Enoch struggles more with describing God himself than with anything else he's seen. He speaks of light that has no source because it is the source, of a face that contains all love yet maintains perfect justice, of eyes that see everything that has ever been or ever will be, yet focus with complete attention on each individual soul. The glory emanating from this figure is so intense that Enoch says it makes the sun look like darkness. Yet it's not harsh or blinding. It's warming, comforting, like coming home after a long journey in the cold. It's the light that every human heart has been searching for, the illumination that makes sense of every question, the brilliance that transforms every pain into purpose. When this being speaks, Enoch tells us, it's not just words that are heard, but realities that are created. Each syllable reshapes cosmic order. Every sentence brings new universes into existence or transforms existing ones into greater beauty. The voice doesn't just fill the throne room, it fills all of creation, yet each being in every realm hears it as if it were spoken directly and personally to them alone. This is the destination that awaits everyone who belongs to God, not just to visit this throne room, but to live in it, to serve in it, to worship in it for all eternity. This isn't a distant dream or a symbolic hope. According to Enoch, this is the most real place in all existence, the place from which everything else derives its reality. As extraordinary as the throne room itself is, Enoch's descriptions of the beings who dwell there are perhaps even more mind-bending. These aren't the peaceful, harp-playing figures of popular imagination. These are creatures of such power, intelligence, and otherworldly beauty that encountering them would overwhelm any human who wasn't specially prepared by God himself. The seraphim are described by Enoch as beings of pure fire, but fire that thinks, fire that loves, fire that worships. Each seraphim, according to his account, is larger than entire mountains on earth, yet moves with the delicacy of a butterfly. They have 6 wings, as Isaiah also mentions, but Enoch provides details that Isaiah couldn't capture in his brief vision. The first pair of wings, those that cover the face, aren't just for humility in God's presence. They're actually generators of worship. As these wings move, they create what Enoch describes as songs that have never been sung. Melodies so beautiful that they cause new stars to be born from pure joy. The movement of these wings somehow transforms the seraphim's very being into musical worship that resonates through every level of creation. The second pair of wings, those that cover the feet, serve a purpose that reveals the incredible holiness of God's throne room. Even these perfect beings, created without sin, created for the specific purpose of dwelling in God's presence, must cover themselves because the holiness radiating from the throne is so intense that even they would be consumed without this covering. Yet the covering itself is worship, an acknowledgement that there are depths of God's nature that even they cannot fully comprehend. The third pair of wings, those used for flying, don't move through space as we understand it. Instead, Enoch describes them as moving through dimensions of reality that don't exist in our physical universe. These beings can travel from one end of creation to another not by covering distance, but by transcending distance altogether. Their flight is more like folding reality than moving through it. But perhaps most remarkable is Enoch's description of their voices. When the seraphim speak, they don't just produce sound, they produce reality. Their words have creative power flowing from their perfect unity with God's will. When they cry, "Holy, holy, holy," as Isaiah heard, they're not just making a declaration, they're actively participating in the process by which God's holiness permeates all of creation. The cherubim present a different kind of magnificent terror. Enoch describes them as beings with 4 faces, but his description goes far beyond Ezekiel's vision. The face of a man, he tells us, represents not just intelligence but the perfect image of what humanity was meant to be before the fall. Looking at this face is like seeing Adam and Eve in their original perfection, amplified to cosmic proportions. The face of a lion represents not just strength but righteous authority. When this face looks at you, Enoch says, you understand instantly what it means for power to be perfectly aligned with justice. There's no cruelty here, no abuse of strength, only the awesome reality of force that serves perfect love. The face of an ox speaks to service and sacrifice, but not grudging service. This is joy and submission, delight and obedience, the radiant happiness that comes from having a perfect master and a perfect purpose. Seeing this face, according to Enoch, makes you understand why worship is the highest joy in the universe. The face of an eagle represents vision and swiftness, but vision that sees not just across vast distances, but across time itself. These beings can see the beginning and end of every story simultaneously. Their swiftness isn't just physical, but conceptual. They can grasp infinite truths in single moments. Each cherubim, Enoch tells us, is covered with eyes, but these aren't just organs of sight. Each eye is a window into a different aspect of God's character. Looking at a cherubim is like looking at a living encyclopedia of divine attributes. One eye shows God's mercy, another his justice, another his creativity, another his faithfulness. There are thousands of these eyes representing thousands of facets of God's nature that created beings can perceive, yet Enoch understands that even this doesn't exhaust the fullness of who God is. The wheels within wheels that Ezekiel saw are described by Enoch in even greater detail. These aren't mechanical devices, but living creatures in their own right. Beings whose very existence is movement. Beings who are the physical manifestation of God's omnipresence. Where these wheels go, God's presence goes. They don't follow God's will. They are God's will made visible in creation. The Ophanim, or wheels, are perhaps the most alien of all the creatures Enoch describes. They appear to be giant rings covered in eyes spinning at incredible speeds. Yet their rotation creates not chaos but perfect order. As they spin, they generate what Enoch calls the music of the spheres, harmonies that keep all the laws of physics functioning properly throughout creation. These beings exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Enoch describes seeing them from the side as spinning wheels, but from another angle as vast pillars of light, and from yet another perspective as flowing rivers of conscious energy. They're the same beings, but they manifest differently depending on the dimensional perspective from which they're viewed. What unites all these extraordinary creatures is their absolute devotion to worship. Every aspect of their existence is oriented toward glorifying God. They don't worship because they have to. They worship because it's the most natural expression of their being. Seeing God's glory, they can't help but respond with everything they have. Yet despite their cosmic size and power, Enoch describes them as having what he calls perfect gentleness. They're aware of his presence, and some of them serve as his guides through the heavenly realms. Their interaction with him is marked by kindness and patience, taking time to explain things his human mind can barely grasp. This tells us something profound about the nature of heaven. These beings, who could destroy entire galaxies with a thought, who exist in dimensions our minds can't comprehend, who understand mysteries that would overwhelm human consciousness, are also capable of tender care for one bewildered human visitor. Power in heaven serves love, not the other way around. In the third heaven, Enoch encounters two features that connect directly to humanity's story: the river of life and the tree of knowledge. But his descriptions of these go far beyond the brief mentions we find in Genesis and Revelation. The river of life isn't just a river, it's the source of all life throughout creation. Enoch describes it as flowing not with water, but with what he calls liquid light, a substance that appears to be alive itself. This isn't metaphorical language. According to Enoch's account, this river consists of the very essence of life, the fundamental force that animates all living things throughout the universe. The river has its source directly at the base of God's throne, flowing from what Enoch describes as the very heart of the Almighty. As it flows through the heavenly realms, it branches into countless streams, each one carrying life-giving power to different parts of creation. Some streams flow to earth, becoming the source of every moment of biological life we experience. Other streams flow to distant worlds and realms that Enoch glimpsed but couldn't fully describe. What's remarkable about this river is that it flows backward as well as forward in time. Enoch describes seeing streams of it flowing into yesterday and toward tomorrow, suggesting that this divine life force operates outside our normal understanding of temporal sequence. The life you experience today, the consciousness reading these words right now, has its ultimate source in this eternal river that exists beyond time. The sound of this river is described as indescribable, like a symphony of every voice that has ever lived, yet perfectly harmonious. As it flows, it sings, and its song contains within it every true word that has ever been spoken, every genuine prayer that has ever been offered, every cry of joy and every tear of sorrow that has ever been shed by those who love God. Along the banks of this river grow trees unlike anything Enoch had seen before. Not just the tree of life, but entire forests of trees, each one bearing fruit that serves a specific purpose in God's cosmic plan. Some trees bear fruit that, when eaten, grant perfect knowledge without the curse of pride. Other trees produce fruit that heals not just physical ailments, but spiritual wounds that span generations. The tree of life itself stands at the center of this forest, but Enoch's description reveals it to be far more than a single tree. It's more like a complex organism that exists partially in each of the seven heavens simultaneously. Its roots extend down through all the levels of creation, drawing nourishment from the very foundation of reality. Its branches reach up into dimensions that Enoch admits he couldn't fully perceive. The fruit of this tree is described as containing within it all the experiences of perfect existence. Eating it doesn't just grant immortality. It grants the ability to experience every moment of that immortality as an adventure, as a discovery, as a new facet of joy. This isn't the tedious immortality we might fear, the endless repetition of identical days. This is immortal life that grows richer and more meaningful with each passing eon. The tree of knowledge presents a more complex picture in Enoch's account. Rather than being forbidden, as it was in Eden, this tree in heaven has been transformed by God's redemptive power. The knowledge it offers is no longer the knowledge of good and evil that brought the curse, but what Enoch calls the knowledge of good and good, the ability to distinguish not just between right and wrong, but between good things and the best things, between partial truths and ultimate truth. Enoch describes the fruit of this tree as crystal clear, containing within it what appears to be miniature universes. Eating this fruit, he's told, allows the consumer to understand the full story of creation from God's perspective, to see how every apparent tragedy serves ultimate purposes, how every loss leads to greater restoration, how every tear shed in faith waters seeds of eternal joy. The leaves of both trees serve functions that extend far beyond the trees themselves. As these leaves fall, they don't decay but transform into what Enoch describes as messages of hope that travel throughout creation. Every encouragement that a believer receives, every moment of unexpected peace in the midst of difficulty, every sense of God's presence during dark times, these all have their origin in the falling leaves of these heavenly trees. What's particularly moving in Enoch's account is his description of how these trees respond to human need. When someone on earth cries out to God in genuine desperation, when someone faces loss that seems unbearable, when someone questions whether their pain has any meaning, these trees somehow sense that need and respond by producing exactly the kind of fruit or leaf that will ultimately bring the help that's needed. This isn't magic or wishful thinking. This is the description of a creation so perfectly designed by a loving God that even the trees in heaven participate in the care of struggling humans on earth. The same God who notices when a sparrow falls has created a universe where even the vegetation in heaven is attuned to human need. For Enoch, walking through these forests and drinking from this river was more than just a beautiful experience. It was a revelation of God's heart. Every tree, every stream, every falling leaf spoke of a creator who doesn't just tolerate human need, but has built the very structure of creation to respond to it with abundant provision. Perhaps one of the most challenging aspects of Enoch's descriptions for modern readers is his account of the architectural structures in heaven. These aren't buildings as we understand them, constructed from physical materials according to the laws of physics we know. Instead, Enoch describes structures that seem to be built from music, from light, from what he can only call crystallized worship. The Palace of Praise is described as a massive structure that exists primarily in the fourth heaven. But this palace isn't built from stone or metal. It's constructed from what Enoch calls songs that have become solid. As the angelic beings worship, their praise somehow takes on physical form, becoming walls and pillars and halls that provide structure for further worship. This isn't just poetic imagery. Enoch describes walking through these halls, touching these walls made of music, feeling the vibrations of worship that compose them. The walls themselves continue to sing, he tells us, creating an environment where worship is not just an activity that takes place within the building, but the very substance from which the building is made. Different sections of this palace are built from different types of worship songs. The foundations are made from what Enoch calls songs of thanksgiving, deep, sustained notes of gratitude that provide unshakable stability. The walls are constructed from songs of praise, harmonies that reach upward and create space for more worship. The roof is formed from songs of adoration, high, pure notes that seem to dissolve into the very presence of God Himself. What's remarkable is that this palace is constantly growing and changing. As new beings join in worship, as new songs are sung, new rooms and halls and chambers are added to the structure. The palace is a living, growing entity that expands to accommodate every voice that wants to join in the cosmic symphony of praise. The Library of Lives is another structure that defies our normal categories of architecture. Located in what Enoch describes as the fifth heaven, this building appears to be constructed entirely from crystallized memories. Every life that has ever been lived, every experience that has ever been had by any conscious being throughout creation is preserved here in perfect detail. But this isn't just a storage facility for information. Enoch describes walking through halls where the walls themselves show the memories they contain. As you move through different sections, you can witness the great acts of faith throughout history, see the moments of love and sacrifice that God treasures, observe the secret kindnesses that were never recognized on earth but are celebrated in heaven. The structure of this library is organized not chronologically but thematically. All the acts of courage throughout history are housed in one wing, their collected memory creating walls that pulse with heroic light. All the moments of selfless love are gathered in another section, their combined warmth creating an environment so comforting that merely walking through it heals every wound of rejection or loneliness. What moves Enoch most deeply is discovering that the largest section of this library is dedicated to what he calls the hidden tears of faith. Every moment when someone trusted God despite not understanding, every prayer offered in darkness, every act of obedience performed without recognition. These memories create the most beautiful architecture in the entire library, structures of such delicate beauty that they seem to be made from crystallized hope. The Workshop of Wonders exists primarily in the sixth heaven and serves as the place where God's creative work continues. This isn't just a room or building, but what Enoch describes as space that thinks, an environment that responds to divine imagination by immediately producing whatever God conceives. Enoch watches in amazement as new types of beauty are designed here. New forms of joy are crafted, new ways for created beings to experience love and fellowship are developed. This workshop is where God prepares the experiences that will fill eternity for His children, ensuring that immortal life will never become boring or repetitive. The tools in this workshop are unlike anything from earthly experience. Instead of hammers and saws, the work is accomplished through what Enoch can only describe as focused love. God's love for His children, when concentrated and directed, becomes the force that shapes new realities and creates new possibilities for joy. What Enoch finds most overwhelming is realizing that much of the work happening in this space is specifically focused on preparing experiences tailored to individual believers. God isn't just preparing generic heavenly experiences. He's crafting personalized eternities that will perfectly match the unique nature and desires of each person who will spend forever with Him. The archives of eternity represent perhaps the most mind-bending structure Enoch encounters. This building exists in all seven heavens simultaneously, yet maintains perfect unity. It's larger than entire solar systems, yet intimate enough that every individual record can be accessed instantly. Here are kept the records not just of what has happened, but of what could have happened, what might happen, and what will definitely happen. Enoch describes vast halls dedicated to documenting the alternative histories that would have unfolded if different choices had been made, not as exercises in futility, but as testimonies to God's perfect foreknowledge and planning. These archives reveal that every prayer that has ever been offered is not just recorded, but actively influences the ongoing development of God's plan. Of Enoch sees how individual prayers from thousands of years ago are still generating results, still shaping events, still bringing about the fulfillment of God's promises in ways that the original prayers never could have imagined. The architecture of these archives is built from what Enoch describes as crystallized time, moments of divine action that have become permanent structures. Walking through these halls, Enoch experiences not just the sight of historical events, but the actual sensation of being present when God acted in response to human faith and need. All of these structures share certain characteristics that reveal the nature of heavenly reality. They're all alive in some sense, responsive to the needs and purposes they serve. They're all connected, sharing not just physical space, but what Enoch calls spiritual resonance. And they're all growing, constantly expanding and developing as God's eternal purposes unfold. This is the architectural context in which the redeemed will spend eternity, not in static buildings that remain forever unchanged, but in living structures that grow and develop in response to the ongoing creativity of God and the expanding understanding and capacity for joy of His children. If the visual descriptions of heaven in Enoch's account are overwhelming, his attempts to describe the sounds of the celestial realms are perhaps even more extraordinary. This isn't just about beautiful music, though music plays a central role. Enoch describes a sonic environment so rich and complex that earthly concepts of sound and silence, music and noise become completely inadequate. The foundational harmony underlies everything else Enoch hears in heaven. This is what he calls the sound of God thinking, a deep, resonant tone that seems to emerge from the very structure of reality itself. It's not exactly music and not exactly speech, but something that combines elements of both while transcending the limitations of either. This foundational harmony is constant, never pausing, never changing in its essential character, yet constantly developing new variations and complexities. Enoch describes it as being like the sound of infinite love, having infinite conversations with itself, each conversation exploring new facets of divine joy and purpose. What's remarkable is that this harmony isn't just something you hear, it's something you feel in every atom of your being. It resonates through your consciousness, aligning your thoughts and desires with the very heartbeat of creation. Listening to it, Enoch says, makes you understand intuitively why worship is the most natural response to God's presence. Layered over this foundational harmony are the songs of the seraphim, voices so pure and powerful that each note they sing creates new colors in the spiritual spectrum. These aren't melodies that could be reproduced by human voices. They operate at frequencies that affect reality itself, songs that literally hold creation together through their perfect harmony. Each seraphim, according to Enoch, has a voice that spans ranges impossible for earthly vocal cords. They can sing notes so low that they shake the foundations of cosmic order, yet switch immediately to notes so high that they seem to pierce through dimensions into realms that Enoch couldn't even perceive. When they sing together, their voices create harmonies so complex that they contain within them every beautiful sound that has ever existed or ever could exist. But the most extraordinary thing about their singing is its effect on the listener. As Enoch listens to these songs, he finds that they're not just expressing worship, they're teaching it, creating it within him. The songs themselves generate the very emotions and understanding they express, making it impossible to hear them without being transformed into a more worshipful being. The cherubim contribute what Enoch calls the rhythm of righteousness, a complex percussion that seems to emerge from the very structure of moral law itself. Their four faces each contribute different rhythmic patterns. The human face provides the rhythm of wisdom, the lion face adds the beat of courage, the ox face contributes the steady pulse of faithful service, and the eagle face creates the soaring rhythm of divine vision. When these rhythms combine, they create what Enoch describes as the heartbeat of creation, a cosmic pulse that synchronizes with the foundational harmony to create a musical environment so perfect that listening to it realigns every disordered aspect of your being. Sin, Enoch realizes, is essentially being out of rhythm with this cosmic heartbeat, while righteousness is learning to move in harmony with it. The Ophanim add what might be called the frequency of holiness, sounds that operate at such high spiritual frequencies that they cleanse and purify simply by being heard. These aren't pleasant melodies that you enjoy. They're transformative frequencies that actually change the spiritual composition of whatever they touch. But perhaps the most overwhelming aspect of heaven's sonic environment is what Enoch calls the voice of the Almighty. This isn't God speaking specific words, though that happens too. This is the sound of God's very existence, the audio manifestation of infinite being, infinite love, infinite power operating in perfect harmony. Enoch struggles to describe this voice because it operates on multiple levels simultaneously. At one level, it's the gentlest whisper, more tender than a mother singing to her child. At another level, it's louder than the explosion of supernovas, powerful enough to speak galaxies into existence. Yet somehow these contradictory characteristics don't conflict. They harmonize in ways that reveal new dimensions of divine nature. What's most remarkable is that this voice is personal. Despite its cosmic scope and infinite power, when it addresses you, it speaks your name with such intimate knowledge and love that you understand instantly that you are completely known and completely loved by the one speaking. Every word carries within it the full weight of God's eternal commitment to your ultimate joy and fulfillment. The response to all this divine music is equally extraordinary. Every created being in heaven contributes to what Enoch calls the eternal song, a musical composition that has been growing and developing since the moment creation began and will continue expanding throughout eternity. This isn't a repetitive chorus where everyone sings the same thing. Each being contributes their unique voice, their unique understanding of God's character, their unique experience of His love. The result is a musical tapestry so complex and beautiful that no created mind could ever comprehend its full scope, yet so perfectly organized that every individual voice blends seamlessly with the whole. What moves Enoch most deeply is realizing that this eternal song has a place prepared for every human voice. The song isn't complete without the contribution of every person who will ever trust in God's love. Your voice, with its unique tone, its unique perspective, its unique experience of God's grace, is needed to complete the cosmic symphony. The silence in heaven, when it occurs, is as meaningful as the sound. Enoch describes moments when all of creation pauses in what he calls the silence of worship, times when the overwhelming awareness of God's presence creates a hush so profound that it seems to contain within it every sound that has ever been made in worship. These silences aren't empty, they're pregnant with meaning, filled with a kind of awe that goes beyond words or music. In these moments, Enoch says, you understand that even the most beautiful sounds are just echoes of the infinite beauty of God Himself. As Enoch prepares to leave the heavenly realms and return to earth, he's given one final gift: the ability to hear what he calls the echo of heaven in earthly sounds. From that moment forward, every genuine expression of worship on earth becomes for him a preview of the eternal song. Every act of love becomes a note in the cosmic symphony. Every cry of faith becomes a harmony that connects earth to the heavenly chorus. This is the sonic environment that awaits every believer. Not just beautiful music to enjoy, but active participation in the creative, ongoing, ever-expanding song that is the universe's response to God's infinite love. Your voice is already written into the score. The only question is when you'll take your place in the choir and add your unique note to the eternal symphony of praise. The journey through Enoch's account of heaven reveals something that goes far beyond mere descriptions of a beautiful place. It unveils a reality so magnificent, so perfectly designed for the flourishing of conscious beings, so completely oriented around love and worship and joy, that every earthly pleasure becomes just a shadow, every earthly beauty just a hint, every earthly love just a whisper of what awaits. But Enoch's vision isn't meant to make us dissatisfied with earth or eager to escape present responsibilities. Instead, it's meant to give us the perspective that transforms how we live now. Knowing what's coming, knowing what we're being prepared for, knowing the eternal context in which our present struggles and joys take place, changes everything about how we approach each day. The seven heavens that Enoch explored aren't distant, unreachable realms. They're the dimensions of reality that surround us now, the cosmic context in which our earthly lives are taking place. The throne room of God isn't far away. It's the ultimate reality that gives meaning to every moment of existence. The angels Enoch encountered aren't absent from our world. They're actively involved in the unfolding of God's purposes in every generation. The rivers and trees and palaces he saw aren't waiting in some distant future. They're the eternal realities that our temporal experiences point toward and participate in. And the songs he heard, the worship he witnessed, the love he felt in every corner of heaven, these aren't reserved for some future existence. They're the invitation extended to every human heart right now. The opportunity to begin participating in eternal realities while still living in temporal circumstances. Enoch's account of heaven is ultimately a revelation of God's heart. Every detail he describes, every beauty he struggles to capture in words, every aspect of celestial life he witnesses, all point to one overwhelming truth. God has prepared something for those who love him that exceeds every dream, fulfills every longing, and satisfies every desire for meaning, beauty, love, and purpose. This isn't just a promise for the future, it's an invitation for today. The same God who prepared these indescribable glories is present with you now, working in your circumstances, responding to your prayers, preparing you for the unimaginable joy that awaits. Every trial you face, every act of faith you perform, every moment of worship you offer is part of your preparation for the seven heavens that Enoch saw. The book of Enoch reminds us that our earthly perspective is limited, that reality is far more magnificent than we typically imagine, and that we were created for something so wonderful that even the best earthly experiences are just training exercises for the real thing. If this touched your heart, if these visions of heavenly reality stirred something deep within you, then you're experiencing exactly what Enoch intended. You're feeling the pull of your true home, the call of your eternal destiny, the invitation to live now in light of what's coming. The seven heavens aren't just Enoch's destination, they're yours too. And the journey begins not when you die, but the moment you choose to trust that the God who prepared such wonders is worthy of your complete faith and love. That's when earthly life becomes a preview of heavenly reality, when present circumstances become the training ground for eternal joy, when every day becomes an opportunity to practice for the endless worship and wonder that awaits in the presence of the one who is preparing a place for you that exceeds every dream your heart has ever dared to dream. Spreading the gospel isn't optional, it's a command in the Bible. YouTube can be a powerful tool as you can share the gospel to the nations with simple videos like the one you're watching right now. And that's why we've created Christian Creator Blueprint, which is a comprehensive course and online academy that teaches you how to share the gospel on YouTube without being on camera. God may be calling you, will you answer? Click the link in the description to get started.